Let's take a look at the volumes. We had muted volumes in yesterday's session, only 340 million traded. A down day yesterday, down day once again today. So clearly negative sentiment throughout the whole week.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here after a while. Well, we have to look at the trend, the way the market has been performing. There's been a slight slump if you look at the way the returns have been. But that's just more or less with regards to we are moving into a holiday season. So there'd be a lot of short-term selling of stocks, which may have a slight effect on the market per se. But also having in mind, you notice that there are certain counters that have actually posted very impressive prices, like Limuru tea, you notice, moved from 300 to 350.
Well, Limuru tea, I mean, just taking a look at those numbers, an increase in pre-tax profit, 33.2 million from a loss of around 37,000 shillings in the first half of 2009. And we know that tea prices generally on a global level have recovered. Also give us some insights into the impact of the shilling on this company.
Well, you have to look at it, not just the impact of the shilling. You notice that even output for them has gone up as high as 87% in terms of tea production. The prices have been favorable, and the exchange rate more or less has more or less worked slightly in their favor. But when you look at it in terms of it as a general stock, it's subject to actually temperamental weather. For instance, like the last time they posted losses, if you notice, they were giving earnings per share of about 0.94 shillings. Well, at this time, it has jumped to about 19.28 earnings per share. So if you look at that, you can clearly tell that it's a share that is actually susceptible to the market trends and more or less the environment.
Looking at Eaagads, of course, a coffee grower and a company that also turned around a loss into a profit in the first 6 months of this year. We're looking at 49.7 million shillings from a loss of 11 million shillings in the first half last year. So a nice recovery there, but I suppose the same really goes for Eaagads as well. It is about the shilling and it is also about the various weather changes as well.
True. Because you look at that and the way it is, the weather has helped them, has actually made them be more profitable because output has increased. But again, the same situation whereby when the weather pattern changes, they end up being in the red. So it's more or less about them balancing out. But in the likes of Eaggad, you notice that Eaggad is more or less diversified because it's not just dealing with coffee. It has other fresh produce departments as opposed to Limuru tea, which more or less focuses solely on tea production.
Very quickly, which of the agricultural stocks would you be buying into? I mean, obviously, we're starting to see these companies turning around, so good prospects that lie ahead. Hopefully, obviously, a lot of volatility could lie ahead as well.
Well, the rule of the thumb of the way I normally advise people would be to look at each of the agricultural stocks has its own strength. So I'd also go for Sasini, Limuru tea. The only thing is that Limuru tea is slightly expensive because at 300 or 320 per share is slightly on the higher side. But when the likes of Sasini that average maybe 14 shillings, 15 shillings is more or less a reasonable share to buy and hold, but for medium to short term.
Barclays Bank released results recently, a 19.4% increase in net earnings for the first half, and also news out today for Barclays Bank saying that they're not going to issue the final 2 billion shillings of a medium-term note. They say they've got enough funding. So even better news for Barclays Bank.
Yeah, it is. It has been good news. The banking industry has been literally laughing all the way to the bank in terms of the way they've been posting profits. You look at Diamond Trust Bank, you look at Barclays, you look at Standard Chartered, it's all been positive news for them in terms of growing expansion. And then notice KCB just the other day had a rights issue which was overwhelmingly subscribed and more or less going to show that there's a lot of confidence as far as the banking industry is concerned, and more or less banks are regarded as blue chips. And then with the advent of credit reference bureaus, it means that the issue of bad debts will be a thing of the past, because now you'll be able to deal with whoever is coming on board to borrow because you'd have their credit history.
Yeah. Well, just taking a look at Diamond Trust, you mentioned this company outperforming its peers in terms of earnings. Where to from here for this company?
Well, I'd say Diamond Trust more or less ended up with a very good management structure. They ended up, once they turned around by rebranding, they focused, especially they're very strong in asset finance. You know, this SME sector, they're really good at what they're doing, and that is paying dividends. Because if you look at the economy right now, it's the small, medium enterprise businesses that are actually holding the economy together. They are really boosting the growth of the economy. And if you're, particularly as a bank, in that niche market, you tend to reap dividends because these are the people who are specific in terms of being your clients.
Taking a look at the likes of Bamburi, a company that has been heavily traded over the last few sessions. Yes. Also just keeping in mind that the government has a massive focus on infrastructure spend and of course infrastructure bonds coming to the fore constantly. So a great outlook yes. for Bamburi, clearly.
Yeah, it must be, because also by the demand and with the onset of the fully fledged East African community, the demand for cement far outstrips the supply. And with Bamburi being slightly one of the larger cement producers, they're right there in terms of trying to meet up and trying to bridge that deficit. And with a lot of infrastructure going on, we've got housing projects that are coming left, right, and center within, not just within Kenya, but within the larger East African community. So yes, I would say that the signs are positive for them.
Cooperative Bank set to release results next week. We know there's many companies on tap, in fact, for the next couple of weeks. How are you playing the markets at this point in time? You said we are heading towards a holiday season, so perhaps some market yes. players sitting on the sidelines, but at the end of the day, we also have to digest some of the interesting numbers that are going to be coming through.
Yeah, so it's slightly a balance. The month of August, normally we experience that because it's truly holiday season. Most people are now on vacation, so they tend to like sell off slightly to have a slightly bigger nest egg in terms of their holiday packages, and that tends to bring an issue. You notice even the courts are in vacation, so there's little much economic activity over the period of August. Towards the beginning of September, we notice sudden revival or resurgence in terms of trading at the market.
Well, just also looking at the fact that investors have been getting a lot of good news, but no one's really latched onto any of the good news to try and push the markets even higher. You mentioned that perhaps the month of August is slightly subdued, but there are a lot of market players out there that think that there's still a lot of positivity to be had when it comes to the NSE 20. Where are you putting your yes. money at this point in time, and where do you think it's going to end up by the end of the year? We're sitting at around 4,000 or so on the NSE 20. Some are even calling 5,000 relatively soon.
Well, I would be in the camp that is talking about 5,000, the range of 5,000 towards maybe a threshold of 6,000 towards the end of the year, because there's a lot of positive sentiment. You look at what happened after the referendum, there's been a lot of interest in terms of reviewing of the economy, Kenya as a whole. And then also we have interest not just from domestic investors, but also from foreign investors who've realized that, yes, Kenya is actually an emerging economy. It's a market where we can put in investments, and we know that our investments will be guaranteed. We have strong companies that are actually showing positive trends. And going forward, if you look at the structure, even with the NSE, there are systems in place that have been put in to ensure that we no longer have issues of rogue stockbrokers, or you never have collusion, or you have one party controlling the whole system. With the ongoing demutualization, which is still ongoing and is a process that is about to be concluded, you see a lot of positive sentiments as far as the NSE is concerned.